Hi, my name's Keith. In this video, I'm going to show you how to program a Roland CR-78 without the optional WS-1 programming interface. I just did an overhaul on this machine and I needed some way to test the programmer. Now there are two ways you can write your own patterns into the CR-78 if you don't have the WS-1. One of them is by using a foot switch connected to the write-in memory write jack on the back. It doesn't work very well, but it's really easy to do. The other way is with a custom trigger cable, and I'll show you how to make one of these. You can actually use a second drum machine like this Kawai R100, and you can play patterns out of this drum machine into the CR-78, essentially cloning them from one machine to the other. Now the only requirement is the source drum machine has to have a clock out that is either 24 or 48 pulses per quarter note, and you also need a programmable trigger out that you can assign to different instruments. But let's start with the foot switch. You can't use just any foot switch to program the CR-78. You need a sustain type pedal where the switch is closed normally, but if you push the pedal down, the switch opens up. If you have a multimeter with continuity tester, you can figure out what type of switch you have. The beep means that the switch is closed. If I push the switch down, the continuity is broken and the beep stops. Here's the back of the CR-78. Plug the foot pedal into the jack marked TS1 right. Before I get into programming, I'll explain the controls on the front panel. There are 4 yellow program rhythm buttons marked 1, 2, 3, and 4, and these are the 4 memories for the user patterns. Each memory location can have up to 4 tracks associated with it, and that's indicated by these 4 LEDs up here. And each track can have any arbitrary drum sound associated with it. And the drum sounds are selected with this rotary knob. And they are bass drum, snare drum, rim shot, hi-hat, cymbals, etc. There's a program toggle switch here. In the upper position, it's the memory write position. And if you push the foot pedal, it will program that instrument on a particular track in the user memory you have selected on that particular beat. If you push the clear button, it will erase that particular drum sound from that particular track on that beat. In the middle position, it's play, and the program rhythm buttons act exactly like the preset rhythms. It just plays the pattern. And the bottom position is marked all. And what that will allow you to do, if you push the clear button, it will erase all instruments on all tracks. So if you want to completely clear out of track, you just put it in all, push the clear button, and wait for it to cycle through the entire pattern. So I'll put in a simple beat here. I'll put it up to the memory write location. Now before I actually hit start for the clock, there's no metronome or click to let you know where you are in the pattern. So there's kind of a trick here. You can turn the tambourine sound all the way up, and you can use that as an indicator on where you are in the bar. So I'll press start, and you can hear the beat of the tambourine. And it's on bass drum, so I'll put in some simple beats here. And you can hear it. And now I'll do a snare drum. I'll put it back to memory. And now I'll do some hi-hats. You can hear it's not quite in time. It's very difficult to program in real time with the foot switch. So let's look at the other method of cloning a pattern from one drum machine to the other. The custom trigger cable is a straight-through cable with the addition of a PNP transistor acting as a switch. I built a transistor into the barrel on one end of the cable. Here's a close-up. It's a standard 2N3906 PNP transistor with the base connected to the trigger source and the emitter and collector connected to the end of the cable that plugs into the right jack on the CR-78. In addition to this cable, you'll also need a standard straight-through cable for the clock. Here's the back of the CR-78 again. Plug the custom trigger cable into the jack marked TS1 right and the straight-through cable into the jack marked external clock. Here's the back of the Kawai R100. If you have a different drum machine, the jacks might be labeled differently. Plug the custom trigger cable into the trig out of your drum machine and plug the straight-through cable to the clock out of your drum machine. The two drum machines are now hooked up so that the Kawai R100 controls both the clock and the right switch on the CR-78. So we shouldn't have any of the timing issues we did with the foot switch method. The whole procedure, though, is still a bit tedious, even more tedious than the foot switch method, if you could believe it. Before we start, I'll play a few bars of the pattern from the R100 so that you can hear what it sounds like. It uses 4 instruments: bass drum, snare, hi-hat open and closed. Pretty basic pattern. Those will be cloned into the CR-78 on the bass drum, snare drum, hi-hat, and the cymbal because the CR-78 doesn't have an open hi-hat sound. I'll pick bass drum as the first instrument to clone between the two machines. So I'll select bass drum on the CR-78 and make sure that the memory switch is in the right position. Then on the Kawai R100, I'll assign the bass drum to be assigned to the trigger out. So that'll take just a second. Now all I have to do is press start on the CR-78. You'll notice that the clock didn't actually start because it's waiting for the R100. So I'll press start on the R100 and then press stop after one cycle through the pattern. Now I'll temporarily disconnect the clock from the back of the CR-78, and I'll just press play so that you can hear that the bass drum was actually programmed. There we go. Now I'll put the clock back in, and now I'll do the whole procedure again with the snare drum. So I switch to snare, put this in right. Now assign the snare on the R100 to the trig out. Now I press start on the CR-78 and play the pattern again. And again, I'll pull the clock cable from the CR-78 and press play, and now you'll hear both the bass and the snare drum. The tempo was slow because the knob the tempo knob on the CR-78 is actually turned slower than the clock on the R100. Now I'll do the other two instruments. Okay, now the programming is finally done, so we'll hear the whole pattern on the CR-78, and I'll turn the tempo up as well. And there we go. The pattern doesn't have any of the sync issues or the timing issues that we had with the foot switch method. So those are two ways to program the CR-78 without having the WS-1 programmer interface. Both methods are a bit awkward, but they allow you to take full advantage of the functionality of the drum machine. Thanks for watching.